What's up guys, Nick here back with HN Entertainment's review for Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 2. So as I did with the season premiere, I am going to recap the major events of this episode before getting into my thoughts on it and how it's going to set up a very big Episode 3. So obviously, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the episode, go check it out and come back and we can discuss. So without further ado, here we go. The episode opens up with Daenerys and the council at Winterfell, which comprises of Sansa, Jon, and a lot of the other big characters that have been hanging around, deciding on whether or not they should let Jaime actually fight alongside them. Ultimately, they decide to give him a sword and let him fight against the undead under his new queen, Daenerys Targaryen. But as a result of that scene, we start to see that Daenerys is having a lot of trust issues with Tyrion, because she actually finds out from Jaime that Cersei has her full army and the Iron Fleet all waiting at King's Landing to fight whoever ends up winning up north, thus lying to her, basically going back on her whole pledge of allegiance to go send her army north. After that scene, we finally get to see Jaime and Brienne talk to each other, which is a big thing that was set up at the end of last episode. Interestingly enough, Jaime actually doesn't get any hate from Brienne because Brienne is now the Three-Eyed Raven. He's changed, he no longer harbors guilt or anger towards anyone really, he just sort of sees what's happening in the entire realm. We also get to see the relationships between Jaime and Brienne of Tarth and Gendry and Arya finally start to develop a bit more. And in this episode, we actually see Gendry and Arya finally reveal their feelings towards each other, and it's a pretty big moment. Speaking of big moments, like I just mentioned, during this episode we get to really see a lot more of Jaime interacting with Brienne of Tarth, and both the characters kind of sticking up for each other and putting their reputation on the line for one another. And at a certain point towards the end of the episode, we actually get to see Jaime fulfill one of Brienne's wishes, which is to get knighted, and it's probably the highlight of the episode for me. Another one of the big moments of this episode was Daenerys and Sansa still being at odds with each other, and more or less Sansa tells her straight to her face, "We are not going to give up the North because we fought so hard to get it back, and once you take your throne or whatever, we're going to be staying independent up here up north." So that's a pretty big blow to Daenerys, and we're gonna have to see how that actually plays out because a lot of stuff is going on with Dany this episode. A lot of people that she thought she trusted are now basically being put at odds with her. We also saw Grey Worm and Missandre decide that if Daenerys' army wins the battle, they aren't going to stay at Winterfell because they believe there's more to their life than just living up north and growing old there. Another one of the key moments was Lyanna Mormont talking to Jorah and being very adamant that she's going to be fighting alongside everyone against the White Walkers and that she doesn't want to be left out just because she's a child. We also see that Samwell gifts Jorah with his family's sword Heartsbane. The big moment to cap off this episode was Jon finally telling Dany the truth about his lineage and revealing that he is Aegon Targaryen. Thus, he has the most rightful claim to the Iron Throne. And it's a very interesting moment because it feels like something that has been brewing for quite some time, but the realization on Daenerys is pretty striking because at first she actually claims that he just made it up or that his friends made it up because the only person that had the info was his best friend and his brother. So it seems like that's going to be a very big plot point going on between Jon and Daenerys. The episode does end with the Night King's generals showing up at Winterfell, finally setting the stage for a very big explosive battle in episode 3. So overall, my impressions for this episode were fairly positive. I think after last week's episode we all kind of expected this episode to be the big showdown, but that wasn't the case. Instead, the writers took their time with one more episode, giving all of the major characters kind of a last farewell, last hurrah moment before the long battle ahead. So whether or not you guys agree with that, be sure to leave your thoughts down below. What did you guys think of this episode? I think overall I'm leaning on about an 8 out of 10. It still had some great fan service moments in there. Like I mentioned earlier, the highlight for me was Brienne getting knighted. I thought that was just a very heartfelt moment overall in really anything in Game of Thrones. And I love the character development that they've given Jaime over the past couple seasons. I mean, he just really changed as a character, so hopefully that continues through and we get to see him be more of a heroic character in this final season. But like I said, post your thoughts down on this episode in the comments below. For more on Game of Thrones and everything pop culture, be sure to subscribe to HN Entertainment.